Hello, friends. Welcome to the Veterinary Life Coach Podcast. Today, I have a wonderful guest for you. His name is Dr. Lee Baucom. He's the creator of the Save the Marriage system used around the world for 2 decades. He's the author of 4 books on relationship issues and marriage recovery. He is a relationship coach and works with people around the world to save and restore their intimate relationships, even when a partner has given up. His method proves useful for people working on their own to turn their marriages and committed relationships around into loving, thriving, connected relationships. He shares that approach in his system, his writing, and the Save the Marriage podcast. He's been podcasting since 2013, so longer than I have. He's married with 2 adult children and 2 active dogs, which I love. Welcome to the podcast, Lee. I'm delighted
Oh,
to have you.
thanks, Julie. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be great. I don't have people very often talk about marriage, so I think this is going to be really interesting for all of us that have been married for a while, and even the ones that are in committed relationships, I'm guessing, right?
Yes, there is a shift that happens psychologically that is marriage or very long-term relationships. And other than that, that shift is tough. But yes, it still applies.
Yeah, I love that. Well, my first question to everyone is to tell me their story. So you can tell me as much or as little as you want, but just kind of give us an idea of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, we won't go back too far. Let's just go back to graduate school.
You can start
Um,
wherever you want.
Yeah, well, and there is an influence. One of the reasons that I am interested in what happens to marriages is having watched as a child the divorces in my extended family, and let's say the bad divorces in my extended family, and
Interesting.
watching the damage that happened really across at least 3 generations in those moments. So that's part of my interest in how do we actually recover. But just to go back to graduate school, I did training as an individual therapist and then specialized as a marriage and family therapist. And so as I was finishing my PhD, I was getting frustrated with the ineffectiveness of marriage therapy, doing a lot of research on that and was actually writing my dissertation and was reading a magazine about this new profession of coaching. This is before there were coaches on seemingly every corner. It was
Right.
very
Yeah.
rare.
It was fairly new,
It
right?
was back in the mid 90s, early 90s, mid 90s. In fact, when I was reading that, it was about 94, 95. And I turned to my wife and I said, "This is how I do therapy." And so she, after sticking through, multiple graduate degrees, she said, "So what are you going to do about that?" And I said, "Well, I guess I could do some training in that." And so I did finish my PhD, and I was already in practice at that point. I'd already been in practice for a number of years, and then did a 3-year training in coaching and made my shift over time, even though I was still in the office and still seeing people under the guise of therapy. I really was using a coaching approach and was trying to find out what is the best way of helping couples and marriages survive, even if there is only one person who's wanting that to happen. After a while, after complaining a lot about something, I think it's necessary to say, well, so this is what I do believe. And that began to be the beginning points of the Save the Marriage system. At that point, it was me writing down, here's how people can actually improve their marriage. And I was testing it out and really studying how that could happen. That ended up being a system that has now been used around the world, as you mentioned, and led to me continuing to work with a wide array of people from around the world, including quite a few veterinarians, and then writing about the different segments of that. So I've really tried to dial in what does happen to marriages and how do we turn them around when they get into trouble.
Okay. So I guess an obvious place to start would be what does happen to marriages,
Yeah. And
right?
so that's an interesting question because what I experience is a lot of the work that people do as therapists is dealing with the symptoms of it. They think it's the cause, but it's really the symptoms. So I would sit in my office and have someone come in and say, we need help with our communication. That was what they thought the problem was. But I sat there and listened to them. They were easy to understand. They understood each other. It was not communication. And so then I often had them talking about the fights they would have over money or kids or in-laws or religion and politics. Now more politics has come into that.
Yeah.
And those kinds of topics, sex also. So those topics would be what they thought the problem was. Again, symptoms of the problem. Sometimes they would come in because there had been infidelity of some level, either emotional or physical, and they would say, well, that's the cause of this. Again, a symptom. So let's dial back to what that is. I call it the pause button marriage. So here is what I watch happen. For over the years while I was in the office, if you were getting married in one of seven larger places of faith in the community where my office was, you had to come through my office for three visits. So I got to talk to a lot of people before they got married and hear their
Nice.
story. And then I would see them down the road when they suddenly found themselves in a crisis. And so I heard the stories about how they built up their relationship, how they built their connection. They find this person that's interesting, they dig in, they connect with them, they decide that they're going to spend the rest of their lives together, and then they launch into life. And now doesn't mean it happens right after they get married or right after the honeymoon or a month in or 3 months in or whatever, but at some point they say, okay, we've got our relationship down. We've got the love. We've got our relationship. So now we can turn our attention to the kids, the job. And so just to bring this into that life, starting a practice, building a practice, joining a practice, working your way through the practice stuff, all of the
Right.
challenges of that. Maybe it's hobbies or interest or friends or travel or whatever, but there is this amount of energy that they felt like they had invested in the relationship to get it to the place where they could now hit the pause button and turn their attention to other things.
Hmm.
And the problem is you can't pause a relationship. It's either growing and expanding or shrinking and dying. But because they don't see that the momentum of their relationship is going to carry them for a while, they don't see the damage that starts to accumulate from that. And so they go from these habits of connection to habits of disconnection, always with the intention that they'll come back to us at some point down the road. And
Mm.
if it's the kids, at the point when they are whatever, out of diapers, in school, out of school, whatever, profession, when the practice is, finally on solid footing, when it's full, when the debt's paid off, whatever it is, right? Whatever
Yeah,
that
whatever the
next
next
thing.
thing is, the
Yeah.
next step in life.
And unfortunately, it's always a little bit out there. We always put it a little bit further out there. And so we accumulate the pattern of disconnection.
Mm.
And since we don't recognize our own place of disconnecting, we experience the feeling of being disconnected from our spouse. We're often able to say, this is not my bad, it's their bad, and point the finger not helpfully at the other person and
Sure.
think, why are you not wanting to be connected with me? But it ends up being a very joint pause button that both people hit.
And it's inadvertent or not on purpose. Like we don't know we're doing it. I can't
It
think of the
is,
word I want.
it's not intentional.
Intentional. That was the word I was
Yes.
trying to get. Yeah.
It's not intentional. I think it's mostly subconscious. I mean, there is some um, realization that you've established this relationship and you think that that's going to carry it. So there is some mental calculation, but the mental calculation is not about disconnecting. It's just about going, how do we reallocate this energy that we've put into this relationship into doing life? Most people, can look back and go, yeah, we were pretty single focused when we were getting together. That becomes a kind of a consuming pattern. And so
Right.
you feel like you're putting your energy into that. And of course you're doing the other things. A lot of people, and for me, we were in grad school together, starting our career together. And so that's the temptation is I'll put my energy there. And so the same for a vet who's preparing, doing maybe vet school or starting a practice or all those things that might be along the way going, I've got to put the energy here. So it's not intentional. And nobody sees the damage coming until the damage is inflicted.
And do you think this happens in all relationships? Do you think it's just the relationships that start to become symptomatic? Like, what do you think?
It
about
doesn't
connect.
happen in all relationships.
Okay.
I think there are some people who manage to juggle that, but the relationships that get into trouble, as I've watched them, yes, those are the ones that hit the pause button. So let's go back to those couples that I was seeing before they got married.
Right.
One of my jobs, at least is my perception of my job in that, was to pick some fights between them because they come in feeling like they've got this, like that all they're doing is going through the steps of the three steps, and then we're free to go.
And then we're getting married.
Then we're getting married. And so they weren't particularly looking for somebody to challenge them. And so my job was to challenge them quietly. And so one of my conversations with them would be if I walk down the road in most places in the US and I just pulled someone over and said, "Hey, what are the chances of a marriage surviving?" Most people would say, "Oh, 50-50." I mean, it's a little better than that, but let's put that roughly that. So a
Right.
50-50 chance, right? Coin toss. So I'd say to the couple, you know those facts. Why is it you think you've beat those facts already? How have you beat the odds to be willing to step into that if you know that it's a coin toss? And to the couple, they would tell me because we have the real love. They had believed that the love is what mattered. I'm not saying love's not important.
Right.
It's just not what's going to carry them
Sure.
through the challenges. And so, because they felt like they already had that, like they had established this, then they didn't see the other dangers along the way, including the fact that when they're addressing all of their energy elsewhere, they're diminishing their own connection.
So tell me about that connection. What is it with the people that are making it and then the people that are not making it? What is that all about, the connection part?
Yes, so let's step back. So the disconnection is what gets them in trouble, but let's step back and
Right.
talk about how they did connect.
Okay.
And I think it may be helpful to think through these are three levels of how we connect. And I'm not
Okay.
saying you do level one, then level two, then level three. This is not like a video game where you're trying to get to the next, big
But
boss.
it's three different ways that people connect.
It is three different levels or three different dimensions or ways that people can connect. So we'll start
Okay.
with the most basic level, and that is physical connection. I mean, and so my puppy is beside me. Clementine is there, and she understands physical connection. And this is where, vets are cuddling up to the animals coming in, rubbing on them and getting to know them because that dog's going, oh, this physical connection, we're good with each other, right? So
Right.
loving touch, right? So loving touch, and when I say that in the context of marriage, people go, "Oh, you mean sex?" And my response is, "Well, no. I mean, yes, that is one way, but no, that's not all of it. In fact,
Only. Yeah.
that's a piece of it, right? And
Right.
everyday life is hugs and kisses and hand holding and back patting backs and patting backs back giving back rubs, pats. Yeah, all of
Right.
those things are ways that we do that. It basically is like there's a trust here, right? You don't let people touch you like that unless you're trusting them. And so that level of connection is both the physical contact, which has a cascade of effects on the body, but also a trust safety place. So, and when I'm on the couch tonight, Clementine will be up against my leg because that's what she understands.
Mm-hmm.
Humans have this other capacity of language and other ways of communicating that go beyond that. So the next level up is emotional connection. I don't think my dog will tell me much about her day to day, and she won't care if I tell her about my day. She doesn't
Right.
like me talking, but there's nothing there, right? But humans have this way of wanting to share what's going on in their life. That's emotional connection. And there are two feelings that come along with that. Do you get me? Do I get you? So we get each other. And do you support me? Do I support you? We support each other. Those are the two levels that we are communicating in that connection. And so that is a skill that people are developing on how to do that with each other over the years, and then often stop doing that along the way. And they think that they're continuing to do it. And because I will, watch the interactions where one will say, "Oh, how was your day?" And the other will say, "Oh, well, I had this meeting and I, had this many patients and I had this many things to do," right? So they give a report of their day. This level of connection is about rapport, not reporting. The
Right.
rapport we build is aside from the reporting of your day because they didn't answer the question, right? So, how was your day? I did this, this, and this. Oh, okay. And we move
Right.
on.
Rather than I was really upset and blah, 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 and got some emotion into it.
I had to deal with this situation and it really
Right.
was tough on me, right? And
Yeah.
this, I mean, we know from the world of vet life that this is where burnout happens, right? Of those tough
Big time.
moments.
Yeah.
And so the strains on that then suddenly are being kept in.
Right.
And so that emotional connection ends up being emotional disconnection.
Mm.
So that's the mid level. The upper level is, or the next level up is spiritual connection. And many times people have assumed this is emotional connection. So I want to kind of draw a difference. So emotional connection is both a verbal and nonverbal piece. Physical connection, purely nonverbal. I can talk about hugging someone, tell them blue in the face, but it does make a difference until I hug them, right?
Until you do
Emotional
it. Yeah.
connection. As we've been talking, and by the way, these three levels are for every human connection. Not, and it's just different. It's a deeper level in a marriage, but we do this with friends. So as I'm talking, you're nodding along, and I'm like, okay, you're with me on this, right?
Hmm.
So that's nonverbal, and so we do verbal and nonverbal emotional connection. Spiritual connection is just verbal. That is the place where we tell somebody what is most important to us, our values, what we dream about, what we hope for, what we fear, that deeper level of ourselves that we really don't share with too many other people at that level.
Sure.
So back to that couple, the couples that were coming through my office, they always had the story where they were attracted to somebody, they kind of connected with them, so they're building the physical and emotional connection. But then they had this talk at some point, usually a late night talk, where they talked about the family they came from, the things that they want out of life, where they want to head in life. And that's where they would tell me they fell in love. That's the
Right.
spiritual connection.
Okay. So
And
that's the
then
falling in love, or
that's the
is it?
deep one, right?
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
it's most vulnerable. Somebody has just
Right.
shared this deepest part of themselves with you, and you're like, oh, that's a really cool thing. First of all, the vulnerability of that. And second, you fall in love with where they want to go in life, their
Right.
values, all of that. And so then often couples stop having those conversations, that level of conversation. So the emotional connection, they start reporting the day instead of building the rapport, and they stop having the spiritual connection, and the physical connection often wanes. And so back to there's certain professions that are often more touched out at the end of the day, and vets are one of them. I mean, all day you're hands on and everybody's, getting their attention. And so it can feel like there's just no more room for the physical connection. So that also has a risk to it. So all three of those can often disappear in the midst of the relationship, leaving them very disconnected.
Yeah. I can see where I used to say when I was working full time and I had kids, and after being a veterinarian all day, you're constantly trying to like connect with this client and the pet. You're giving a lot of your emotion to this job. And it's when you came home, it was kind of like you just didn't want to deal with anybody. And I could see where you would just close out your husband and just be like, I got nothing left for you.
Yeah.
It's like I'm the running the hospital and taking care of the team, and then I'm taking care of the kids, and then it's just like there's not one more word in me for the relationship. I could
Yeah.
see where that happens a lot for
Yeah.
veterinarians for sure.
And the interesting thing is, and as I've watched in our culture, we have come to equate that as like, I've got to do this like I've got to give this connection to somebody, right? Instead of seeing it as we have the opportunity of connecting and that being something that is a gain, we see it as a drain, like we're constantly
Right.
doing this drain.
Like
But
it's a chore.
exactly. And yet it could be that piece could be the reset after the work of getting back into life and of connecting with something that is not everybody trying to get from you, but a place of connection and giving.
Right. Right.
I often have said to people, okay, so you're telling me you just don't have the energy end of the day. How much energy does it take? For instance, while you're sitting down, I don't know, finishing records or watching TV or doing something else, just to be up against your spouse, like side by side?
Right.
Or how long does it take to actually share some challenge of the day? that
Right.
allow somebody into your life and you're allowed back into that connection. How hard is it to spend a little time talking about a book or an experience or a movie that spoke deeply to you? None of those are big gains, but it feels like that's just it's one more thing I have to do, right? And so we end up with this checklist mentality of I've got to do these things for the relationship instead of we can do these things to reconnect and kindle our relationship and keep it kindled. So your question earlier, does every relationship hit the pause button? No, because some do actually manage to continue the physical connection, the emotional connection, and the spiritual connection. And so they avoid having hit the pause button.
Yeah, I can see that in my own marriage because my husband is a pretty good listener and I'm a pretty good talker. So when I would come home from work, I would like unload all those emotions onto him and he's kind of a logical type of person. So it was good for me because he would like be understanding but also not get all cranked up like I was.
Hmm.
And so it was kind of like that grounding, I think, in some way. And I think that helped us, not maybe not pull apart like sometimes happens with very stressful jobs and
Hmm.
raising kids and all those things. I mean, not that we don't have our moments, but
So my guess is
makes sense.
he did something right in that of trying to uh, allow you to be emotional without trying to fix it, right? That's one of the things that often
Right,
happens for couples. They fall into the feeling they've got to fix whatever's going on with their spouse instead of they've just
right,
got to be there through the connection, which, by the way, helps to fix the emotional level of that, right? And
right.
so many people kind of miss the connecting piece because they're in fix it mode
Hmm.
or they're in busy mode. And so they're
Yeah.
not listening, they're not paying attention, they're doing whatever else. And that distraction is something that people feel when you're trying to offer something and the other person is, I don't know, on the phone or whatever else,
Yeah.
you realize you're hitting a dead end there, and that can
Yeah.
be hard on the relationship too.
Yeah. Well, and that did come with time because I can remember having those issues at times and then just being like, okay, now the question is, do you want advice? Do you want me to try to fix this or do you just want me to listen? Because that's what he would have to say to me. And I'd be like, just listen, because I already know what I'm gonna do. I just gotta unload the emotion, like I've got the decision. I just need to get rid of the emotion. So yeah, the question was, do you want me to fix this or do you want me to just listen? I'm like, just listen. So
So
I think
this
that's something.
that's the second layer. So the first layer is being willing to have a conversation, being willing
Yeah,
to have that. The second layer is knowing what to do with that conversation, and that's a masterful job of saying, "What do you need from me in this? You want me to
right.
just listen?"
Yeah,
Or,
it took time
yeah,
to get there.
yeah, that's a skill set.
Yeah,
And many
it
people
took
don't
work.
realize it because it's easy to get clicked into the I've got to fix it.
Right,
And then they miss the fact that sometimes fixing it is just listening to it.
right. Yeah, it absolutely is. So if somebody, I don't know if I'm jumping too far ahead, but if somebody's in that place where they feel like a relationship, whether it's their marriage or their partner or someone at work or their boss, like any kind of relationship, if they feel like it's in trouble or they feel like it's not going well, is there things that they can do? Like is there like I think that's part of your plan, right? A step by step
Yeah.
kind of plan.
Yeah, so let's see if we can separate out two different things because what you would
Okay.
do in a marriage versus what you would do with like at
It's
coworkers
different.
and things, it is different.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's more of a degree of difference. So the I just earlier we were talking about those three layers of connection.
Connection.
Those are how we connect as humans to other humans. I mean, across
Right.
the board. How
Yes.
you do that is important, right? I mean, a close friend may tell you some of what's really important to them, what their values are, probably not the level that is shared in a marriage. At least it
Yeah.
shouldn't be. That's where the bulk of that can be shared. Same with physical connection. I mean, there's a place where, maybe touch on the shoulder is okay at
Yeah.
work,
Or
but
a
generally,
hug.
or a hug. But
Right.
much beyond that, we're in safety zone. In a
Right.
marriage, not so much. So there are some degree differences, but they are still the ways we connect.
Same
If
stuff.
somebody, yeah, so how are you is, many people, how are you doing? And the proper response is fine, how are you? but it could be, it's been a really tough day. And to share some of that if somebody is connected enough. If I'm, like this morning I was at pickleball, I was going, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm not really wanting to hear their inside story. They might share it, and I'm actually willing to hear it.
Sure.
But that's not really what that
Not
is
what you're
set up
looking
as.
for.
It's not
Right.
really how we do that.
Let's go
This
play
is social
pickleball.
contract, right? But in practice together, that may be something. Hey, how are you doing after that difficult case? How are you doing
Right.
with after that patient or the
Yes.
patient's owner came apart? Those are places of connecting that way. And so let's take it one further. In professions where I see people with a strong team, they are sharing some of that spiritual connection. Like, this is what's important here. This is what we value as a team. This is what I value, and that's what I want to have happen in this place, right? So
Right.
those levels of people asking, how do we reflect our values here, is both healthy for the practice or organization or whatever you're dealing with, but it also feels connecting with that person. Like, that's often why people feel close and connected to a leader who's able to share that, because they are revealing something and they are offering a connection in that.
Right.
So let's go back to the marriage though. So that's that, and we can come back to what do you do, within the
Within a
professional world, but
team.
let's
Yeah.
let's go back to the marriage. Um, so here's the interesting thing. When I use those three levels, we've done a couple of things all at once. One is it often helps people clarify where the disconnection has happened, like at what level or all three levels. Where did that happen? So first of all, it's kind of a diagnostic. But it's also a goal orientation. Like, how do I want to restore that? How
Mm,
do I want
okay.
to add back the connection, physical connection, the emotional connection, the spiritual connection? And since I don't know where anybody is as a group, I have a easy way of thinking through it. And it's, what do you do on the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual? A little bit more than what's going on right now. A little bit more.
That's the answer. Just a little bit more.
Not a lot more, because it
Yeah.
can't handle that if you're
Sure.
disconnected, but a little bit more. So a lot more things that I often see people do is these grand gestures, or what they see as kind of the turning things, like a date night. They rarely do what people want. Um, and when they do, they're kind of not needed. So I've heard people like, we are going to do date night. And I'm sitting there going, I mean, in a connected relationship, that kind of just happens. Like, hey, let's go grab a dinner and see a movie. And it's not a
Yeah.
big deal. You're not
Right.
putting a lot on it. When somebody has to say, we're going to get dressed up, we're going to make reservations, we're going to get childcare, we're going to do all those things, suddenly expectations are up here
Hi.
and the relationship is down here, the connection is down here, and so it can't handle that big of a jump.
Oh,
The same with doing like the romantic getaways, when that's kind of a so we can get back to us kind of thing. You have to build to that, and so doing the little bit more, the little bit more, the little bit more, you're making deposits in what I call the connection account, because right
mm,
now, many times the connection account is overdrawn because neither person has been depositing in it,
right.
and they thought it was okay. Like, they would just suspend that account and then come back to it down the road. But there's service fees that are coming out every month, the resentment that comes in, the frustrations that come in, the miscommunications that come in, and they're wiping out the connection that was there until they're overdrawn. And then they're at a deficit, and you can't suddenly cash out. You can't spend your capital when you don't have any. And so you're having to rebuild until you're at a positive. And then it's possible to do those bigger things. You just don't want to start off with that. So a little
Yeah.
bit more.
And the a little bit more thing can be done just by one person in that relationship. It sounds like from what I read in the bio, like it can
That's
be
right.
one-sided.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is where a lot of people get stuck. They're like, well, what do I do? My spouse doesn't seem to want to work on this. And so first, I don't suggest that too many people keep asking, do you want to work on this? Because there is a mismatch there of who's ready for what.
Right.
But you can do these pieces on your own. And one of the constant refrains I get from people is, well, it takes two to tango. And my response is, you're already tangoing. it's just not going well, right? The
Yeah.
steps aren't working for you.
You're going in the opposite direction.
So maybe we change the steps, right? Maybe
Mm,
you change your steps because that's really the only place you have control. You can't make a spouse do that, but you can change your own steps. And often, because the marriage is a system, like the dance, it's a system that if you change one side, it changes the other side. They don't see it coming, but it's a gradual warming of the relationship. And the reason is because we humans really need connection.
hmm
That is a basic human need for us. And so that connection for somebody to go, oh, wait, there's some connection here. That is a good way of noticing that there's a way to draw somebody in through connection. So one of the things I often see though is they initially get a negative response from their spouse.
When they try the small steps.
When they try the small steps, when there's a big change that the person senses like, what are you up to? And that comes from the hurt
Yeah,
because they haven't expected it. So this story probably will fit well for vets. I was driving down the road and saw this dog that had been hit on the road, and I stopped and I wrapped it up in a towel and I was taking it to the car and we were going to drive it to the vet. Well, that dog latched onto my arm. I mean, I had a coat on, so it latched onto my arm. I walked in there like, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine," because the dog is just responding to hurt. I mean, that
right.
that dog wasn't
It's
angry
in
with me.
pain.
The dog was
Right.
just in pain, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we watch that same reaction from people that they lash out because they're hurting, not because
Mhm.
they don't want the connection, but because they don't know what to do with it. And so sometimes we realize that to cross metaphors, back to the negative balance, that can drive some painful responses from people until we get to that positive. So just being aware that if is very disconnected, you may see kind of a no reaction or even a negative reaction because of the pain that comes along with disconnection.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So doing a little bit more in all three areas. Yeah.
And let's add
Is that
another
right?
way of thinking about that.
Okay.
Yes, those three areas are good, but to do it invitationally. And I think this is one of the more critical framings for people to understand. So we've gotten some, here are the targets, right? But to do it invitationally feels very different. So let's date night would be it's non-invitational. Like we are going to do this. That's not very invitational. It feels imposing and it's got a high barrier,
High
as opposed
demand.
to
It sounds
yes,
demanding. Yeah.
it's demanding
High
and
expectations. Yeah.
expectations are high. The cost emotionally, physically, even out of your pocket, all of those things are, that's what's on your mind because this hasn't happened in the past, as opposed to this. Hey, I heard about a restaurant up the road that really has good sandwiches. I was thinking of going and trying it out. Would you like to go with me? That's an
Mm,
invitational way of doing it.
okay.
And if they say no, you go try the sandwich out or say, could I bring it back to you? Right. So there are a couple of things in there. First, you're offering to do something together. And just in that, that feels warm. I mean, if you contacted me and said, hey, would you like to get a cup of coffee? Even if I was busy, I would go, that's really nice of you to think about that. Right. So there's a layer of connection that's just in there, just in the invitation.
In the invitation. Yeah.
It's also a light lift. Like we're not going on date night. We're just going to go grab a sandwich or a cup of coffee or take a walk with the dog or whatever small little thing.
I think simple.
It's invitational.
Okay.
And that can be done in lots of those different ways. So invitational feels much more natural and less imposed than trying to inflict your connection on somebody.
Right. And then how would you deal with the rejection if they continuously say no? Like, is that then on you to handle that part of it and just, process that emotion, let it go, and then try again? Is that how you
Yes,
coach your people to deal with that if they have somebody that's very disconnected from them that they're trying to get reconnected with?
that's why it's important for people to know about that account, that connection account.
Mm,
If you're getting no's, it's still because you're at a negative.
Yeah.
but you may be gaining ground on little by little, right? You make regular deposits in that, keep trying, and
Hmm.
recognize that while you're at a negative, you're probably going to get that. It should be no surprise. There may be
Sure.
sometimes, many times people say, I can't believe it. They went with me to get a cup of coffee. I can't believe it, right? But
Yeah.
that tells me that the person was going, okay, well, I mean, first of all, it turns out that you weren't trying to manipulate me. And the way they would know that is if you said, "Hey, you want to go get a sandwich?" and they go, "No," and you go, "Well, I'm not going either." Right? Then
Right.
it's
Then
got
that's
to
a
be
manipulation. Yeah.
it's got to actually fit, right? And
Right.
even though your intention was to create connection, just recognize you can go up and have a sandwich and enjoy the experience, and that's a piece of it. So being invitational, recognizing that you might get the rejection for a while, and partly because you're at that negative balance, partly because you're actually changing the framing of this. And
Because
so
it's probably been going on a while.
I don't talk to people who this is like 2 weeks ago we started having
Right.
this disconnection, right?
Yeah. It's been
It's
going on a long time.
it's locked in.
Yeah.
And so because of that, the change can often feel a little disconcerting. And so to live through that change is important.
Okay. I love that. All right. What am I missing? Is there more?
There's so much more.
I know there's a lot. I'm asking you to get it all into like less than an hour, and I know that's impossible, but I want to get as much out there as we can to just give people an idea of what you do.
Yeah. So
Um,
let's go with what I consider to be one of the most important elements of a successful
okay, that
marriage
sounds good. What's the
and of a
most?
successful practice.
Okay, both.
And that is being a team. So in a marriage, I call that being a we. And
Yes.
thinking through it that way, like decisions are based on us, our we, right? And so
Right.
there's actually research that shows when people use the plural adjectives, plural pronouns, that's what those are. I wasn't an
Right.
English major, but the plural pronouns,
Right.
they are more successful than when couples are using singular pronouns like I, you, me. When they
Me.
go we,
Yeah.
us, our, they are
Right.
more likely to report that they are happily married. So there are two reasons for that. One is because it's mirroring how they're thinking. And two is that it's actually an intervention of saying we're in this together, we're a team. And
Right.
so I call it being a we. And so to have that
Okay.
mentality is important. If we broaden it out to a team, feeling like we're a team together in this, like we're moving forward together, is important. It doesn't negate that somebody may say, this is what makes sense to me, but including it in it. So how do we do that is important. So
Right.
this is not losing yourself to that. So we'll just push this little team analogy. So pickleball, well, I was out at pickleball this morning. I've already claimed that. When I step on the court, I'm looking at my partner. And that's one of the things I like about pickleball is it's just me and my partner. How are we going to work this out? Right.
Hmm.
So I'm watching going, okay, today they're moving a little slower. I'm going to have to do some retrieving. Oh, their backhand is weak. So I need to be mindful of the forehand area. And so I'm looking for how can I play better at my best to complement them, not to take over the game, but to complement them. Our goal is
Right.
to win, not for me to take all the great shots or to
Right.
pout about the bad shots that they took, but to show up
Become a
to the game.
team.
And
Yeah.
so a team is a mentality that's based in I'm going to do my best for this team.
Yeah. I love that. Because if everyone thought that way, it would make life so much easier. Because most people think of
Indeed.
the me instead of the we or the I.
I would
And
say there's a lot of cultural possibility there if we were all thinking, what's the team we're on, right? How do we do this better? So
yeah, for sure.
yeah, it's definitely true for a marriage. It ends up being true for the family. So we go marriage, the family, but for people in a practice, how do we function best as a team? How can we complement each other? How can we, and I don't mean
Right.
compliment like good job, but like that's important. But
How
the
do I do my job to help others do their job?
how do I complete? Yeah, how do I follow up on this? So all of that is so important, and it just goes further out. The same idea. I mean, I've gone to plenty of vets with my dogs to know that they go, okay, what we need to do, meaning I'm going to have to do something at home too. We're a
Right.
team in the care of your dog or your cat
Right.
or whatever. That is the same kind of thing of joining together and seeing that we have a common cause together. So all of that works on multiple levels.
Yeah, I love that. So if your team is feeling disconnected, if your marriage is feeling disconnected, if your family's feeling disconnected, these are things that you can do to get it back on track as a person. You don't necessarily have to demand that others do it. Yeah, I could see that working in a veterinary hospital really well if one person just decided they were going to be a better teammate
Hmm.
to everyone else. I could see that might turn the tide.
People start showing up differently when they feel that in a marriage, in a practice, in a family, wherever it is. People start showing up differently when somebody starts showing up differently.
Yeah, and you can take the lead. You can be
Hmm.
the leader in
Yeah.
any of those situations. That's cool. All right. So we're getting ready to the end of this. Is there some big thing that we've missed that we should talk about? Or should we get together again and learn more about this? Because this is fun for me. This is fascinating.
We can certainly do a two, but let's recap what we did today.
Okay,
Just
that
people have
sounds
to put
good.
that in. So one of the pieces that we talked about is the kind of the threat to the relationship of hitting the pause button. Most of the people are either going to go, "Ooh, I did that," or go, "Oh, I don't want to do that. So let me avoid that." So if
Yes.
you didn't hit that, now we've also named the three levels of connection that you can just keep doing. But if you hit the pause button, we now have, named three areas where you could start that again, not start
Right.
doing it, but start it again. You've already got a track
Restart.
record. That's
Right.
how you got here, right? So
Sure. Yeah.
and so then as you're doing that and doing it invitationally, making those changes on your own, the mindset that's behind all of that is we're a team, we're in this together. Let's move forward together. And you put that together, you have a basis of a plan on how to turn a relationship around.
Yeah, and you have to lose the blaming, I would think. Like you can't remember the stuff that they said or she said or he said or something like that. You've got to let all that go because you're trying to turn the ship around.
Yeah, move forward. There are some things you can learn from those things, but rarely is it helpful for it to be a blame spot, but a kind of a reality. This is where we've been. Okay, now let's move forward to being a team again.
Right. I love that. And that applies, I mean, as you were talking, I'm like, that would apply to friendships too.
Hmm.
Because I know that, there's friends that you kind of start to drift, and that's almost like the pause button, and you could rekindle those friendships if you worked at it a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's some, we look at friendships and go, okay, I guess that wasn't important enough for me because I didn't do more. I mean, that's just kind of a check of that. And then there are
Yeah.
times we go, I wish I had done more. In a marriage, you have already created the reality of that. And so I always suggest that people give it a try to see what's possible because here's what I've heard lots of times from people. They're like, it's too far gone. And my thing is, you don't know that until you try. You
Right.
feel like that, but you don't know that until you try. And many times they watch things turn around because they actually put in the effort. And so the only way to tell is to put in the effort.
Right. Because if you say that it's too late, then you've just solidified the pause. Like
You've
then it's
closed
just
the options.
right, right. I love that. All right. Well, tell people where they can listen to your podcast, the Save the Marriage podcast, where they can find your books, where they can reach out to you if they want to learn more or need a coach. I'm sure you coach people in their
I do.
marriages, right? Yeah.
I do. And I also have a team of coaches that do that. Yeah.
I love that.
So I always think about, kind of getting married is like jumping on the boat together and you're headed down the stream of life, right? And so there are two places where I might come into that. If you're just floating down the stream of life and everything's beautiful, you don't need me.
Right.
But let's say you hear in the distance the waterfall you didn't know was coming, right? You hear that danger coming and you're like, okay, I've got to turn this around. I actually have for the chronically disconnected, it's called the Unpause app. It's an app designed to help
Hmm.
people unpause their marriage, and that's at unpauseyourmarriage.com.
Okay.
So you're trying to unpause. You remember that pause button. You unpauseyourmarriage.com would be the unpause app. Sometimes people realize that they are well past that. Not only can they hear the waterfall, but it's not far downstream and they are in a crisis, right?
They're
And
going
that's
over the edge.
you're close to it. And so you need to do some emergency stuff to get away from that. And that's the Save the Marriage system. And that's at savethemarriage.com. So
Okay.
savethemarriage.com has links to my podcast. It has links to the system and also has links to the books and other information, including how to get coaching from us. So If you're not quite at a crisis, you just know you know it could come if you don't do anything. That's at unpauseyourmarriage.com. If you realize you're at the edge, then savethemarriage.com.
I love that. All right. I got that all written down. I'll put it in the show notes for everyone
Thank
if
you.
they want to reach out. Any last words before we wrap this up? It's been really interesting. I love all
Yeah.
this.
If you've hit the pause button, unpause. Either way, be a team. That's the big piece.
Those are the big pieces. I love that. So, everyone, this is Dr. Lee Baucom. Am I saying that right?
You're
Baucom?
correct.
Yay, I love it. All right, thanks so much for being on the podcast. It was fun to listen to you. It went by really fast. I feel like there's so much more I could ask you, but maybe we'll do this again.
Another time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
All right, have a beautiful week, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye. Bye, Lee.